have the proper shirt on today because we are talking about serious things. Serious business, guys. Growing up as a teenager, I had an allowance, and then I got a part-time job, and then I had a student loan and a part-time job. I knew enough about managing my money to keep my head above water. After a few years of self-employment, I realised I'd been using the same techniques that I was using as a teenager to manage my money well into my 20s. I hadn't expanded my knowledge or learned new techniques, and I was always still worried about money. In 2020, I mentioned somewhere online that I was on this journey about learning more about money, and so many people asked me to make a video about everything I'd learned. So that's where we are today. We are here for a chat about money, something I've never talked about online properly. I am stressed. In my mug today is a coffee with almond milk. I was on the iced coffees until this week. Now I'm on the hot coffees again. Honestly, Britain, get it together. I've got loads of notes on my laptop here, and I'm going to chat to you about how I took control of my finances as a young adult in her 20s and as a woman as well. I know that a lot of my audience are women and non-binary people, and systemically over time, we have been kept out of discussions about money. I don't like the word empowerment, but hopefully we find this a little bit more empowering, I guess, and bringing the power back to ourselves through understanding and knowledge around money and finances. Everything I'm about to say about money is from personal experience. As I was writing the notes for this video, I realised there is just so much to learn, and I'm just scratching the surface in this video. So I will link resources down below. I'm going to recommend a lot of the resources that I've used personally, and I'd really, really recommend that you continue your journey by checking those out as well. I'm not a financial advisor, and things I might recommend might not work for you, so please seek out professional advice if you're looking to make any changes to how you manage your money. This is a long video. I will try and section it up so you can jump to the bits you're interested in or watch the whole thing through, whatever works for you. But yeah, just so you know, grab a cuppa, we're going to be here a while. And if you're new around here, hello, my name is Lucy Moon. I talk about fashion, lifestyle, living in London. If you'd be interested in hearing me talk more about those things, then please hit subscribe. And if you're not new around here, then hit the bell notification to find out whenever I upload. The bell notification is an absolute dream, trust me. The relationship I had with my money growing up was very much focused on not running out, as opposed to potentially earning more or gaining more financial stability. And when I hit my mid-20s, I realised I had to learn a balance of both to be able to relieve that pressure. For a broader context of my family, my immediate and my wider family have always been employed by someone, and they have a lot of fear around the idea of opening businesses and self-employment or taking any path that's not typical when it comes to your job. When I came home at 21 years old and told my parents I was probably going to be self-employed, they were worried sick, and to be honest, I don't think they've stopped worrying since. I know that some people will really relate to this and their families will be very similar, or they themselves will feel very similarly about money. I think the more we can reduce shame in talking about money and our emotional relationships with money, the more the stigma reduces and the better everyone can be at managing their money. My friend Ortega's actually written a book all about this called We Need to Talk About Money, and it's coming out really soon, so I'll leave a link where you can pre-order it. I am actually buzzing to read that because it sounds so up my street. So after my realisation, these are the things that I did to take control of my money. The first thing I did was educate myself. I don't know about you, but I didn't take economics at school or at uni or even in college. We did not learn anything about money in PSHE, so I was coming from pretty much a blank slate. I used a variety of resources, and I'm still using more resources to really get a grasp of finances, both in like the broader sense and in the personal sense. So one of the key things I came across was this video about how economics works on like a much wider scale, on like a country level. And it's by Ray Dalio, who wrote Principles. I'll link that below. If you don't know anything about macroeconomics, I'd really recommend you watch it. It's half an hour long, it's all animated, and I was glued to the screen. As you can imagine, as a YouTuber, I watch a lot of YouTube, so I also watched quite a few finance YouTubers. My favourite YouTubers who talk about finance are The Break Platform, which is Patricia Bright, Elena Tarber, Graham Stephan, and The Financial Diet. Books-wise, I read Money, A User's Guide, which is by Laura Waitley. Tell me if I got that wrong, but I loved this book. She is a columnist who wrote for the Sunday Times on the finance pages for 10 years, and she breaks everything down in such easy to understand ways. It's a really useful guide to money. It's very UK centric, but I believe there's a US version now as well. But everything is explained in super simple, easy to understand terms, which is exactly what I needed. It was originally published in 2018, but I believe it's been updated now to be more relevant to 2020. But yeah, I'll leave a link for that below as well. So yeah, educating myself and having an interest in personal finance was the first step I took to getting my finances under control. So early on, I realized I needed to make a budget and actually stick to it. Being self-employed means that I get large sums of money at random times. I once got paid half of my year's earnings in 1 month, if that gives you any kind of context to how sporadic and strange it can be. Managing the business side of my money is a whole other thing, but I do like to keep it separate from my personal finances. I know some people can make them work together, not me. Visually, have to be very separate. So I decided to pay myself a salary and pick a day on which I would pay myself and I would stick to it. So I chose an appropriate salary to pay myself out of my business, and then I picked a day that I would pay myself. And then once I decided those things and I'd drawn up my budget, I automated as many of those payments as possible to occur all at once. So I just didn't have to think about it. Direct debits are your friend. I'm also hopelessly disorganized as a person. My whole life is in chaos. So anything that will happen without me having to remember that it needs to happen or I need to trigger it is a really good thing. It just makes my life a lot smoother. So the salary hits my account and then a portion of the money goes into my savings pots, a portion goes into tax, a portion gets transferred out to my Monzo, which is like my monthly spending money, and the rest in my main current account are my bills, which are to the T. So what's left in my current account is my rent and my bills, and then just a little buffer in case, just in case something's going over and I don't want it to go into my overdraft. I know my broadband company sometimes like to charge me random extra bits of money. So yeah, I'd rather that didn't go into my overdraft. Also, as I said, I put a portion of that money into my tax account. That's just because I have to save my tax myself. If you're being paid your salary, obviously your tax comes out of that before you see it. I personally use the Breaks budget planner and edit the spaces in the spreadsheet to suit my needs. So for example, I've currently removed the childcare section and the car repayments because I don't need to use any of those. So I drew up my budget, which I'll talk through a bit more in a second. But when COVID hit, love that for us, I then went back in and amended my budget month by month until I felt more financially stable. I don't know if I mentioned this online, but I lost about 2 months of work during the beginning of COVID. So I just had to adjust my personal budget because I didn't feel comfortable paying myself my usual salary. Feel free to go back in and amend what you've done before. It is a work in progress. I factor in all of my fixed outgoings separately. So I have a row for my rent, a row for each individual bill, which includes for me stuff like my broadband, my water, my council tax, and it's just my portion of what I pay for those. I share a house with my boyfriend, so he pays half. Don't have a joint account right now. We do try and keep things separate. So that includes rent, council tax, water, electricity and gas, and my broadband. I personally don't factor in food as a fixed or variable outgoing because I've learned for me it's just best that it comes out my spending money as it varies way too much for me to predict. But a lot of people do have food in either their fixed or their variable outgoings. So under that, I then list all of my subscriptions, which includes stuff like my Peloton, which is my equivalent of my gym membership, and also like Now TV or like Netflix. All of my subscriptions go in there. I use this as a great opportunity to cull a lot of my subscriptions as well. I had a mix of subscriptions I actually used, subscriptions I didn't use, subscriptions I'd never signed up to or not knowingly signed up to, Vodafone making me pay an extra £1 a month for an insurance policy, and then I also had ones that my business should have been paying, so I went and just sorted all of that out. It's a good excuse to go through them. There'll be stuff you don't even realise you're paying for. So underneath the charity outgoings, I also make estimates of what I might be spending on. What I've written here is foodie fun and games, which means like eating out, entertainment, and then public transport, and also Ubers. As you can imagine, a lot of those have been quite low this year. So those are my variable outgoings. I then do a list of my savings, what's going where and into what pots and accounts. So yeah, that's basically it. I do it on a big spreadsheet, goes January to December, and I make a budget. The variable outgoings plus the remainder of my salary is what ends up being paid into my Monzo account, which is like my fun spending money, and is what ultimately influences how much I pay myself overall. So I just mentioned savings. Let's talk about those. I've always been someone who saves, but more recently I've broken my savings down into different pots or accounts. I'm calling them pots because that's what the challenger banks call them and I've just got it in my head, but often a lot of these are in different accounts. My largest savings pot is for what I hope will one day be a housing deposit, which I'm currently keeping liquid because I'm hoping to buy in the next 2 years. To keep liquid means you're keeping it out of any fixed accounts which kind of lock it away. If I want to buy in the next 2 years, I just want to be free to jump in and and buy somewhere with Jack if and when we find the right place. This is what I was advised to do by a financial advisor. I didn't personally open a LISA or a Help to Buy ISA. Both of those ISAs can be used to save, and then you get a government bonus when you buy your first property. I personally didn't take on any of those schemes because I don't know where we're going to be buying. The top end of the budget limit or the house price limit, oftentimes in London, properties can go slightly above that. And so we didn't want to be actively penalised, which is what the Lifetime ISA does, by taking out the money and withdrawing the money if we weren't going to be able to find something within the budget that they specified. I've just left it. It's definitely worth looking at the Lifetime ISA though, because it is a wonderful option for saving for a house deposit, especially if you're potentially not going to be buying in London or if you're looking to buy in more than a few years. Anyway, so there's one savings account with my potential house deposit money in that I save into every month. I also have another easy access savings account for emergency money. Most experts I've read or listened to recommend that you start your savings journey by saving this emergency fund to cover any unforeseen costs. They generally suggest you save a few £1,000s for covering things like your phone being stolen, an emergency vet bill, something going wrong in your home if you're a homeowner. It's recommended that you have the equivalent of 3 months of essential outgoings saved in your emergency fund. I do not have quite that much money, but it's something I'm probably going to work up to. I also have a savings pot for holidays because I am dreadful at remembering to save for holidays. I created a pot in my Monzo account and I used the roundup option. So when I pay for something, it takes the change up to the nearest pound and puts that away into the savings pot. I don't know if I explained that very well, but I'm sure you can Google it and find out more info. This year I'm not going on holiday, but I used that pot to buy a festival ticket. I think my friend Hannah Witten has talked about having a similar thing, which is her post-COVID fun fund. So she wants to be able to afford cinema tickets and theatre tickets and go on trips away and do all of those fun things that she hasn't been able to do during the past 12 months. I think it's such a good idea, and I think it's really adaptable to whatever your situation is personally and whatever you're passionate about. I also have an ISA which contains a portion of my house deposit. I'm currently trying to work out what to do with that, but let me tell you a bit about ISAs before we move on. Following the 2008 recession and then the COVID financial crash that we've just had, interest rates are very low at the moment. And so over time, if you leave your money in a savings account or a current account, your money is not only stagnating, but also potentially losing value because you can't gain interest at the same rate that inflation is increasing. Probably worth clarifying again that I am no expert and my terminology is probably not great. Again, check out the resources below for way more information on stuff like this. So many savings accounts at the moment are paying 0.01 interest through the pandemic. And at the time of making this video, inflation is at 0.4%, which somehow still manages to outpace the interest you could make. So this is why now many people put their savings into other places, such as fixed rate bonds and ISAs. So an ISA is an account that locks your money away for a certain period of time in exchange for a certain amount of interest upon being able to access your money again. You can get cash ISAs and you can get stocks and shares ISAs. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about this yet, but I will leave a resource below should you want to learn more. But if you've got a portion of your savings that you know you're not going to touch for the next few years, it is well worth looking into ISAs. There's a huge variety, so take a look at some of the options and see what's best for you. I'm really lucky to be debt-free other than my student loans, and in the UK, your student loan doesn't affect your credit score. So getting out of debt is not something I can personally talk about, but if you're in that situation yourself, I'll make sure to leave some resources below. Laura's book also explores debt, so yeah, again, another glowing recommendation from me. Definitely give that a read. So let's talk about another form of saving that I've started doing, and that is paying into my pension. So most people have a workplace pension, but if you're self-employed like me, then you have to set one up yourself. From what I've learned so far, the best thing you can do with your pension is start paying in early. Don't wait because of compound interest. Even though I'm prioritizing my house deposit right now, I still put a portion of my savings into my pension each month because cumulative interest will be so helpful for future me. Laura Waitley says in her book that the average 25-year-old woman's life expectancy is now 91 years old. So we definitely have to do some work to start looking after 91-year-old us. We have a state pension in the UK, but it is relatively small. It works out to about £8,500 a year. So to give some context, our current national insurance payments don't go into some big savings account for 65 years' time. They're used right now to fund the current state pensions. So the government could change the policy in the next 50 years, and there's no guarantee that by then we could have a state pension at all. For this reason, I think it is super important that we all start saving now. So a pension isn't just a savings pot, it's actually being invested into the stock market. And you have a say on where your money goes. Most people can pick a growth profile, yes, including if you are enrolled in your workplace pension. I'm gonna read this off here because I want to get it right. But a pension growth profile is a selection of stocks, shares, bonds, and other investments, organised by risk profiles or by personal criteria such as religious preference or sustainability. Most pension providers offer a few options. I know my pension provider offers 4 growth plans from low risk to high risk, and then also a Sharia plan for investing in only Sharia compliant businesses, and then also a sustainable profile. So to explain compound interest a bit more, I actually heard a really interesting example on the Financial Times podcast. They were interviewing a man called Damien Fay, and he says that if you were to save £125 a month from the age of 20 into a pension and then increase that amount by 7% each year, so taking £125 to £134, etc., you're likely to end up with 2.7 million by the time you're 60 with the current average long-term trend of stock market growth. And that is the equivalent to 1 million in today's money. It's an example of how paying in a small amount regularly can help you benefit from pound cost averaging, which is a theory or concept that I personally probably can't explain very well, but again, I'll leave a description on here or a link below. Many of the resources I've read and used say that if you're younger, it can be most beneficial to go for a higher risk profile in the early stages of saving for your pension, because over a long amount of time, you will see the most growth. It will fluctuate a lot, but you'll be able to ride the waves. And it's more likely that you will make more money from doing that in the long term. And then in a decade or two from now, you might move it to a less risky portfolio, because we're getting closer and closer to when you'll want to be able to access that money. I know I've said this a million times in this video, but this is all a bit confusing. So if you'd like to learn more, there are resources below. I am no expert and I'm probably not explaining this very well. So let's move on to something I've been learning more about recently, and that is investing. I'm not going to say too much about investing here because, to be honest, it deserves its whole own video. It is incredibly complex and there's a lot to learn, and I'm still such a novice. I will say a little bit about it, see if it's good for you or you want to learn more, and I'll link some resources below as per, so you can learn more if you want to. Investing could be a good option for your savings if you want access to the money in over 5 years' time. The reason some people are interested in investing their savings is because it ties their money to the value of the stock market, which tends to outpace the rate of inflation. I'm currently looking into using an investment app to get started. I know there are so many out there, but investing comes in many forms. It's not just stocks and shares. You can also invest in commodities, property, even government bonds. There are so many options, so definitely do your research. The main thing I've learned about investing is it's best to have a mixed portfolio so you're not too dependent on whether one thing is succeeding or not. There are so many options when it comes to investing. You could be super hands-on and selecting every stock and share yourself, or you can pay a small fee to have someone manage it for you and put the money where they think is most sensible. So basically you'll be giving your money to be looked after by professionals. You can also get accounts that tie your investment to the top 100 publicly traded companies in the UK or the US or Japan. There are a bunch of options ranging from low risk to high risk. And if you do want to get into investing, one of the main pieces of advice I've been given is to not put your eggs all into one basket. And again, some of the advice I've been given around investing is to put in a little bit each week or each month just to benefit from pound cost averaging. I've also been exploring some more speculative and unregulated places that you can put your money, specifically cryptocurrencies. If you're new to crypto, I'll link some resources explaining what they're about and what they're like, but it's definitely something I've been interested in the past few months. They were originally created as currencies to offer people new ways of spending their money. As they're unregulated, the value of crypto can rise and fall really drastically, specifically rise for a lot of people, and that's why many people are now interested in it and using it as an investment tool. I've put a small amount of money into Bitcoin and Ethereum, but only money that I could afford to lose. There is obviously risk involved with any kind of investing. However, I would say cryptocurrencies are particularly risky, again, because they're completely unregulated. They could just lose all value within a week. I see crypto as the closest I will ever get to gambling. I use an app called Coinbase to buy and sell crypto. However, I recently learned there are some ethical concerns around both Coinbase and around Bitcoin and the way it's mined and the energy consumption it uses. So I'm currently looking into other alternatives and potentially some more innovative cryptocurrencies to invest in. Speaking of which, let's talk about ethical banking, something I've always tried to do, but I don't always achieve fully. On a basic level, ethical banking means only putting your money into places that are socially responsible. Ethics are complicated, and in the world of finance, I think it's unlikely you're going to find a company or a bank that ticks all your boxes. However, there can be some that do a bit less harm than others. Some more ethical banks are Nationwide Building Society, Triodos, and the challenger bank Starling, who I love. Starling Expressly avoid fossil fuels, mining, arms and military, and instead invest in government securities and other high quality liquid assets. For me personally, I try and avoid my money supporting arms manufacturers or oil and gas companies. In an ideal world, I'd also be avoiding the alcohol and tobacco industries. So as well as banking ethically, you can also choose sustainable investment and pension profiles. However, there are some catches. Sometimes they're not that transparent and can also include stuff like fossil fuel companies because they have a sustainable energy initiative, which is great. So make sure you do your research to make sure that you're comfortable with what that bank considers ethical. Ultimately, I take the view that doing what you can is nearly always better than doing nothing. So I would always encourage you to bank ethically or look into ways that you can make your money support more sustainable causes. As I said previously, nowhere is going to be truly unproblematic. A quick mention about charity as well, because I never see YouTubers who talk about finance talk about charity. I'm currently trying to work out a donation setup that works for me now I'm more financially stable, and I'd love to hear if you fancy sharing what you do or any other finance YouTubers, what they do as well, because I don't really know where to begin, but you know, I think it's important and I think it's a valuable part of what we can do with our money to help make things good. So yeah, if you want to share, like, please do, because it's part of my journey and I'm still learning really what to do. And finally, as well as doing all of these steps, I got a credit card. As I said before, I really want to buy a house in the next few years, and so working on my credit rating is really important to me because it can really help you secure a mortgage. So in 2020, I set up a credit card that is tied with air miles, so I'm able to earn air miles through shopping on the card, which right now feels like the most redundant thing I could possibly be benefiting from, but I know it will pay off in the future. I set up a direct debit for every month as well, so I never forget to pay it off. I'll be honest, I often forget to use it, but I'm really trying to remember to use it every month, and I also do some bigger purchases on it as well to push myself towards my credit limit. Again, credit card people like that, credit score people like that. So I bought my Dyson Hoover on it, for example. That's me, bit of bougie. No shame in expensive Hoovers here. However, do start small and get used to it first. Don't jump in at the deep end. Credit is a whole pool of weird, so just take your time with it and get to a place where you're comfortable. And those are all the steps I've taken to take control of my money as a woman in her 20s. That was the longest video I've maybe ever filmed, so thank you so much for watching. I really hope this helps you start your journey with personal finance and also directs you to other resources that can help you as well. I'm still learning so much myself. Maybe there'll be a part 2 at some point. Let me know if there's any other videos around money that you'd like to see. I really like talking about it. I like reducing the stigma, reducing the shame. We're all in it together. We're all learning together, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Subscribe if you haven't already and hit the bell notification if you are new around here, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Oh my god, that's the longest video I've ever recorded. Oh my goodness me.